Hi, you're listening to the Drawing the Ideal Self podcast for August 2021. This month's episode is an interview with Cohman and Cleo Timney, who are both trainee educational psychologists at Southampton University. And what we're going to talk about is their new technique, which is called the Children's Exploratory Drawings. So this builds on the work of Tom Ravenette, and it facilitates conversations with children and young people to explore the way they construe school, their experiences there, their relationships with people, etc. It's a really interesting development. They've modernised it so that it's suitable for today's audience in terms of what happens in schools, but also in terms of the way the drawings are presented. The other thing that we talk about is the process that they went through to develop the technique and how important it has been to them to share it with other people and get feedback. And they do welcome feedback. So just before we do that, I wanted to mention something called Prison Break, which is a BBC Radio 4 series that's really worth listening to if you're interested in anything that was related to the June episode, which was about understanding violent offenders. So Prison Break is a radio programme made by somebody who is a middle-class woman whose husband went to prison for fraud. So she investigates various aspects of prison and its effectiveness. And there's about 6 episodes. It's very interesting, and I'll put the link in the show notes. But you can look it up on the Radio 4 website or probably through their podcast. So it's called Prison Break. Okay, so let's get on with the interview. So we've got Abby and Cleo, who are going to talk about children's exploratory drawings, which is their new technique to help people to understand what's going on with children and young people and explore that using a PCP approach. So can you tell us a bit, first of all, about you? So Abby, can you tell us who you are?
Yeah, so I'm Abby. I am a third-year trainee at the University of Southampton. I've recently been placed in Hampshire and I'm now moving to Portsmouth. And just developed an interest in PCP through university and shadowing other EPs. And Cleo and I were placement partners in our first year placement, which is where this all sort of started from.
Oh, that's good to know. Yeah, right. Okay, and Cleo?
Yeah, my name's Cleo Timney, and actually my journey and Abby's journey are quite similar thus far. As she said, we were placement partners in our first year in Southampton. And I am as well a second year trainee going on to third year. And I have been in Hampshire and I'm staying in Hampshire next year as well. And like Abby said, it's just through watching colleagues and peers using PCP and having input on it at university that it really captured our interest and it's just grown from there.
Okay, that's great. And I think what you've said there reflects a lot of people's experience, that when you see someone doing it, you think, oh, this really works. And that's quite different from the things you might have to go on a course for first, that you then, get the resources, etc. Seeing somebody using something in a live situation where you know what they're trying to do, you can see the value of it then, I think.
Yeah, definitely. And we've definitely had a learning sort of journey, I think, with PCP, from having some university input from B at the university first, and then being able to see it in practice and start using things like blob trees, blob people, and drawing the ideal self, and starting to use salmon lines and things like that. And then from there, I think we started sort of digging into the literature and the research a bit more. And I think we've definitely evolved and sort of adapted our thinking in terms of PCP, and now see it as a really valuable tool for just gaining views or understanding a bit more about where the young person is coming from. And yeah, that's kind of what we're hoping with this tool.
Yeah. Okay. And how did you come up with it?
Yeah, that's a good question. Well, I think, yeah, like we were saying, watching other people using different techniques in blob tree and ideal self, like it's a magic process to watch, and watching those conversations and seeing how much the young people kind of engage in that process comparatively to other assessment techniques that we've seen being used. It just really, inspired us. And we had been using Blobtree ourselves and getting to grips with that and finding it really useful. We had been shown something which was by Tom Ravenette, the school situation pictures. And we'd really liked those and wanted to kind of adopt those and use those, but had found that they were quite difficult to access. I mean, our local service only had hard copies, and they were slightly grainy photocopies of them, and we just couldn't seem to find them anywhere. And in addition to that, now, I mean, just by the fact that they're a little older, we felt like something a little bit more modern might be a useful resource to have. So it was kind of through using those and using Blobtree and seeing the value of that kind of a thing that we decided to kind of create a refresh, create an update. And we really loved the storytelling element of PCP and kind of constructing together and creating a narrative through it. And so what we wanted to do was kind of have a series of images that could be used with storytelling to kind of, chat with a child and get to kind of understand their world. And so, so that's kind of how it came about. I don't know if Abby, you want to add anything to that?
No, well, not really. I think just at the same time as well, it was lockdown. It was when we went into first lockdown. It was kind of when this idea came about. And so we were thinking about how we might be able to move things online. And PCP definitely seemed like something that would easily transfer to that sort of platform. And we also kind of had a bit more time on our hands. Everything we were doing got thrown out of the window. So we found ourselves with a little bit more time, which was nice and definitely what we needed to get this off the ground.
Yeah, you need some time to kind of mull it over, don't you? And also experiment with, might work, that would work, can we do it? All of that sort of stuff.
Definitely, yeah. And we got a lot of support from Tim in particular at the university, but all of the university staff and our field tutor at the time, to sort of run ideas past them and start thinking about how we might create it, what kind of guidance would we need, how we might present it to the world, and all that sort of thing. So that was really useful. Okay.
And can you give a kind of short, snappy summary of what it is?
We can have a go, I guess if people wanted to at the same time, if they wanted to go on the website and have a look, it might be easier to have a look at pictures alongside it. So that's the CEDS.co.uk. So it's a set of simple drawings of school scenes, and we're hoping that they translate common school experiences that most young people will have had into a visual sort of set of images. So on the website, we've got individual images and then we've got all of them together. So it might be things like just people sat in a classroom with an adult at the front, or it might be two people talking, might be some people playing on the playground. So just fairly basic scenes, which can then be just discussed with a young person or used to write a story, as Cleo said earlier. So they're quite flexible. There is some guidance on there about those two ways that they might be used.
How did you decide on what scenes to have?
Well, I think that we had a good idea of some that would be useful to us just from our experience on placement and from some of the young people that we had met and recurring situations that were difficult for young people that we were working with. We had a whole sort of list that we generated ourselves, but then as the CEDS kind of took off and people started to pick them up and use them, we were inviting feedback the whole time. And so actually subsequent lists of scene ideas have come from our colleagues and from their experiences. And so, so set 2 and set 3, the waves that we've released since kind of launching CEDS have come from colleagues and their experiences.
It's definitely ongoing, so we're always looking for feedback on other ones we might add. So we've added some preschool ones, and we've looked at adding some with sort of computers or post-16 sort of targeted ones. So if anyone has any ideas for extras that would be useful, we're always looking to add more.
Oh, that's good. I'm sure people will contact you and
Yeah.
have a request put in.
Yeah.
And who's doing the drawings?
The drawings are being produced by my dad, actually.
Hey.
Give a shout out to him.
What's his name?
His name is John. He very much likes to be in the background and not at the forefront of anything. But no, he's quite a talented artist. And I have to say, actually, he didn't enjoy the brief that we gave him for these because it was quite a conundrum for him to draw images that carried meaning, but also were fairly neutral. That's not something that, as somebody who does art, to kind of give a strong feeling and provoke a kind of response, an emotional response, actually to try and draw something that was more neutral and more open to interpretation was something that he didn't initially relish, but no, he's well on board now.
That's good. And he's willing to do your updates when people put in the requests.
Yeah,
brilliant.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, that's great. So what sort of scenes? I mean, people could go and look at the website. What sort of scenes have you got in there?
We have previously categorised them all. I think we've stopped doing that. There's an image gallery, so you can look through all of them. But what we've tried to do is kind of capture all those different kind of elements of school life that a young person has to kind of navigate. And so we've got lots that focus on unstructured times of the day, so play times and lunch times. And actually, more recently, some colleagues suggested travelling to and from school, particularly with older sort of secondary age and post-16 young people. Another thing that came out of conversations around secondary was corridors, actually, and negotiating crowded, busy, social, dynamic corridor situations for young people can be quite tricky. So we've got lots of those, and then also the more structured times and the times oriented around the learning. And so we've got ones of young people interacting with adults or teachers and school staff around reading and working at tables, moving around classrooms. I think that's a fairly good summary. So some are sort of group scenes where there's a more obvious social element where there's like multiple people in the scene and lots of different bits going on. Maybe a little bit more like a blob tree, but not quite as busy. And then some are more individual. And so I guess the location is a little bit more ambiguous in those. It might be just two people interacting or a handful of people interacting, and they could really be anywhere.
Yeah, I think that it definitely ranges for some fairly simple ones with just a couple of people in, and then some slightly more complex scenes. And when we've sort of used them in practice, you can sort of tailor the images you're presenting to the young person depending on the information you've been given already. So if you're sort of looking to talk about their friendships, you might choose somewhere there's groups, or if you're thinking about exploring their relationships with adults, there's some that you might choose for that. And then we tend to present a range to the young person and let them choose, and then let them sort of lead the conversation or write their own story and just see where that goes with them.
Is there a typical use of them? I suppose that's the first question. And if there is, how would you go about doing it?
Yeah, so one of the ways that we've suggested within the guidance is writing stories with the young people. So as I said, you choose a few images, and we've mostly been doing this online using PowerPoint or whiteboard, but you can also print them and take them in with you if you're allowed back in schools. Yeah. So we've been presenting probably 5 or 6 images, and then just asking the child to choose one that they like and to just write a story about it. And then generally we would scribe the story for them, just so it's written out fairly clearly. And then we might ask further questions if any sort of core constructs come up within that story that they've written. Or we might pick something out and do a bit of scaling or use another technique with it, or ask them to give the characters names, or just ask some more prompt questions. And then if they want to, they can go back and they can choose another one and carry on their story. Yeah. Or we might write a different story for the same image. So there's quite a few different ways it can be used, but that's one of the ways. And then the other one is just sort of having a conversation around a picture that they've chosen, using some of those questions.
And for whichever method people sort of choose to do, I mean, obviously one is going to be more involved and take a little bit longer if you're going to be writing a longer story. But within the guidance, we've produced a kind of possible list of questions that people might like to use within whichever activity they choose. And so they can use those questions to kind of elicit the constructs and then explore them a little bit. And we kind of refer to those questions being in kind of 3 levels. So sort of initially eliciting the construct and getting that clear with the young person, and then exploring that construct. And then if it feels right, and if the young person is engaging and it feels like that there's enough rapport for it, then perhaps bridging some of those constructs into that young person's actual life. Because obviously when we're doing the storytelling, we're kind of keeping it in that imagined world to a certain extent, and talking through metaphor. And so it's really a judgment thing when and if we can start bringing some of those constructs into reality and asking about that young person's actual life.
Yeah. Okay. So you've got a number of different ways people could have a go at it, and a helpful list, which I'm sure people will find very useful. Because sometimes when you start using any sort of technique, you have to use it the way someone's said it might be used, and then you find your own ways of doing it, don't you? So it'll be interesting to see what other things people come up with the set of pictures, because they will find creative ways to use them as well.
Definitely.
They were never intended for, the sort of ways that people use them now. They've been revised and refined, and now there's a load of blog books that are available out there. I was shocked to see how many there were. When I saw it, there was one picture from one book.
There's an amazing range, and that was kind of an inspiration as well. We've definitely drawn on lots of other PCP tools and taken a bit from each of them to kind of just create something additional. Yes.
Yeah, and this could be used in addition to any other techniques, couldn't it? You could use it as a sort of intro session, even if somebody wanted to follow a CBT approach. I'm looking at the picture that's on the website. That could be useful in a CAM service to explain to kids, okay, this, just to give a visual guide to what we're going to do in our sessions. So there'll be lots of different potential uses of these. Have any of the pictures got people who could be parents in them or carers?
Yeah, I think so. Most of the characters are quite ambiguous. So we have had young people who might say, we don't ever say that's a child, that's a teacher, and they can sort of draw from it whatever they like. And there are a few, so for example, there's one at the school gates with an adult sort of waving goodbye to a smaller character, and things like that. So they were sort of created with the idea there might be a parent, but again, it's down to the young person and their interpretation.
Is there a parents' evening one?
There is not currently, Heather, but we can make a note of that one. Add it to our list.
That'd be quite useful, wouldn't it? I would think. Or I'm thinking of kids I've worked with where you get told off by the year head. Is there something like that is already in the set?
I think we've got one with 2 adults talking and then a young person stood behind. So I guess that could be a parent and a member of staff, or 2 teachers. Yeah, but parents' evening definitely go on the list.
Because I always feel sorry for the teenagers who have to go to their own parents' evening. I've done it with not very nice, really, to be talked about when you're sitting there. It's very difficult for teachers to talk to both people at the same time in a way that really is inclusive of the young person.
I'm not sure I would enjoy going to hear people talk about me for an hour or whatever it is.
I would have hated it when I was a kid.
Well, we've just had our end of year appraisals not too long ago, so
same experience. It's a bit like that when you get your report, isn't it? And what about the style of drawings? It seemed to me when I looked at them, they're very inclusive of people by being ambiguous. That there's no clear race, sex, any of the usual things like that might mean somebody says, "Oh, that's not me. I can't see that picture."
Yeah, absolutely. That's really what we were hoping, and was one of the main things when we were creating them or giving the brief to Cleo's dad, that we were hoping they would be inclusive through being ambiguous enough to be anybody.
Yes.
So we actively sort of tried to avoid any sort of gender or race or, any of those stereotypical things you might see within images.
That's good. And I think that's one of the problems with Tom Ravenette's pictures. They were of their time, weren't they?
Yeah.
And definitely now we would say, I think there's one of all the teachers are more likely to be women, for instance.
Yeah.
And although that is typical of teaching, you don't want to start with that, I think.
Yeah.
And the parents ones, very clearly mums in an old-fashioned sort of 1960s way.
Yeah, absolutely. We just wanted the young people to be able to kind of, as you say, recognise themselves in the images and be able to take the story in any direction that they kind of need to or want to. So we just tried to keep everything really neutral and ambiguous.
Yeah. And what in your work at Sykes, how are you using the pictures? Maybe you could both answer that.
Yeah, so I think I've used them to write stories with a young person in casework, and I knew that she liked writing stories, so it was kind of also a rapport building activity for us. So we were working virtually, and then it tends to be included in our reports, but like most PCP tools, it's not necessarily about analysing what the child has said. It's more about communicating their view and their constructs and their understanding to the people working with them to try and sort of build that understanding in others. So I think that's one of the main things that we're sort of holding in mind, is that you don't have to massively interpret what comes out of the use of the tool. It can just be used to gain views and to gain an understanding. Within casework or visits to sort of see young people just to gain their views a lot of the time.
Yeah. Okay. And what about you, Cleo? Is that the same?
Yeah, similar. I mean, I think for me, PCP has become something that it's a sort of essential part of my direct work these days. There's always an element of it, be it the children's exploratory drawings or another technique or a combination. It does always creep into what I'm doing these days. And I think that's just because of the sort of life within the information that you get through it. I often find that when I have disparate little pieces of information and I'm trying to put them all together to build a picture and to really understand what's going on in this young person's world, I often find that sort of PCP techniques seem for me to be the key to kind of unlocking that. They bring the story to life for me and sort of link those bits and pieces up together and give me a real feel for what that young person is experiencing, what their day-to-day life is like, and the things that are on their mind, the things that are important to them. And I think it's my use of it has just expanded. Watching our field tutor Ed Sayer using it, and just feeling like I would never be able to achieve, the kind of magic that he did when he was using it with a young person. And now going through all of our training and all of our experience and kind of producing this technique ourselves and then actually using it ourselves in our work. It's been an amazing journey, and I love using it.
Sorry, I was just going to say, like you said earlier, Heather, I think it is one of those things where you can pick it up and have a go, maybe as it's described in the guidance, but we've sort of been adapting it as we go along and thinking, this worked really well, this didn't work, maybe I could try this, and we're happy for other people to do that as well.
Yeah, that's good. And you'd like people to tell you if they use it and find it useful. So how can people do that? Is it best to contact you through the website?
Yeah, any and all of the possible channels. So we have the website, and on there they can find a link to our feedback survey, which may sound intimidating and time consuming, but I assure you it's a short survey. And you can just give us some of your feelings and your thoughts about using it. We have an email address, exploratorydrawings@outlook.com, and so you can contact us through that. We have a Twitter page, you can contact us through that as well. So any means possible. We are always open to feedback and hearing how colleagues have found using the children's exploratory drawings. And actually through kind of some of the feedback we've had so far, we've heard some wonderful ways in which our colleagues are using the CEDS and adapting them and using them in different ways. And so it's really that the project is quite alive, and we're constantly learning and adapting.
Yeah. So if I will put those details in the show notes, and I'll put them on my website, and I'll put a link on my website to your website so that people can find it. If they come from the podcast, it'll go in the podcast note as well. And what's your plan for this for the future? Do you have one?
Yes, when we have the time. Yeah, we do. We have lots of hopes for it. As we said, we're constantly getting feedback from people and sort of presenting it in new sort of context, and we get some really nice live feedback and people saying, oh, I wonder if we could do this, or I wonder if we could do that. I think one of the things that we're working on at the moment which was a suggestion from a colleague, is scene building. So we're thinking about sort of having broken up images so that young people can use them to build their own classrooms or school scenes that can be discussed with them. And and that came from a discussion with colleagues on our course. That was somebody's idea. So that's something that's in the pipeline. We're just figuring out the details of it. And some of the other things we've thought about is how we might broaden its use to other professions, perhaps people working within schools or other sort of areas of therapy, speech and language and things like that. So that's something we're thinking about as well, and is sort of a long-term goal to make it accessible to other professions. Yeah, that would be great, actually. The other thing is social workers. Children will meet a social worker and have to talk to them, and they don't necessarily have a way to do that very easily. For some kids, they're quite anxious in those situations, and that interferes. The other thing that I think is really useful about this is for those kids who can't communicate very well, they can use the pictures to support that. And is that what you've been doing in some of your casework? Yeah, and we've had another suggestion within discussions of a way people might want to use it is by allowing children to draw on the images if they take printed out ones. So if to reduce that demand on verbal, to be able to draw their own characters or cut them out and things like that. And we hope that the resource, because it is visual, is available to a range of young people, and the professional can just play it by ear and we had a colleague tell us that she had used it. She had done a sort of sorting activity with the images, and so with the young person sorting the images into scenes that I would feel comfortable being in and scenes that make me feel uncomfortable, and then kind of using that activity to support further conversation. And so talking to colleagues about ways they've used it with young people who perhaps might struggle a little bit with communication verbally. It's been really interesting to hear about how they've been using it. That would be a very simple way to do something really useful in one session, wouldn't it? If that's all that you did. Yeah, absolutely. And I think because so many of these ideas are brilliant, I think we're also in the sort of near future thinking of how we can start to incorporate some of these ideas into the website so that people kind of have access to these different evolving flexible ways of using the resource. And I think if you had an easy way for people to send you their suggestions, I suppose actually they can do that on Twitter or they can send you an email, but it's very encouraging to know that it's open to change. One of the ways that we've kind of been getting those suggestions live is actually through doing workshops. So we did a little bit of a workshop with our colleagues on our course as part of a whole course day. And during that session, we sent people off into small groups so they could talk through the images in more detail and chat about different ways they could use them. And so it was really interesting then to come back together and feedback live within that kind of workshop situation. That was a really kind of productive conversation for us. I mean, it's great that you've got people on your course who are engaged and interested and willing to try things out for you as well. Yeah, definitely. We're definitely at the right point in our career, I think, to have lots of trainees in particular who are really willing to give things a go and take them back to their own local authorities and sort of spread the word for us as well. So we definitely appreciate all of our course mates as well.
And it would definitely lend itself to somebody's thesis,
Yes.
projects, service evaluation, all sorts of things you could get out of that.
Yeah, it would be great if in the future, if anyone would be interested in doing some research around it, that would be really wonderful.
I'm sure there will be somebody, because now and again people contact me and I'll send them on to you if they do.
Thanks.
Have you got a sort of beta readers, a sort of feedback group, so a little group of people, maybe a dozen or something like that, who would give you feedback? So when you've got a new development, you can get them to have the first people to look at it and just make sure it's okay before it goes out. You might
not
already
officially, not officially, but I think our cohort is probably the group that gets it usually.
Yeah.
Just a WhatsApp message. Can anyone look over this? Or
okay, that's great.
That kind of thing.
Good.
Yeah.
Good.
Yeah. Despite how busy they all are, our cohort have been very open and willing to help us out with that. So yeah, they are our unofficial beta testers.
Oh, good. Good. Okay. That's right. And I guess the university will be helpful in future about that, because they have new people on their courses. They'll be very excited to know this is something that's been developed on that course.
Yeah, hopefully.
I'm sure they will. Yeah.
It's been really nice as well. We've been invited to a few, like the EP Reach Out webinar, but also some other team meetings. We went to a team meeting in Torbay, which thankfully was virtual. So it was a lot easier. But it's been nice to sort of link up with some other local authorities and to hear their ideas and to see their sort of passion for PCP as well, and to be able to share with them and meet with them has been a really nice opportunity for us.
That's good. So if people are thinking, oh, we'd like one of those workshops, they can contact you and ask.
Yeah, we've been doing sort of a 15-minute presentation, if anyone would be interested in that, or we can do slightly longer workshops. But...
Okay, that's great. And you are doing one soon for Coventry Constructivist Centre. So
yes, which is very exciting.
Yeah, and that's coming up in September. So if people do want to come to that, I will put the details in the show notes, because this, I hope, will go out in August. So they might hear it before your workshop.
Yes, that would be great. And that will be a good opportunity as well to be involved in some discussion if people have had a chance to use them, or we might have a go on the day or have a think about some ways they can be used. So hopefully people would go away with a bit more confidence as well in using them in their practice.
Yeah, that's good. Okay. And what have you thought of writing it up into a book?
Not quite yet. I think the idea has sort of flown around. It's just when we can find the time. We have been talking with Elaine, Schoen from the PCP day that we had at the university, who I believe is writing a book. And I think we will write something short to go within that, and maybe as a first step. And then something we can think about a bit more in the future. Yeah,
that's good. Good.
Yeah, we might start with a sort of larger pamphlet. I think we have quite a lot of ideas for the kind of progression of the resource, and so actually at some stage it may naturally progress to a bit more of a book sort of form, as we kind of add to the guidance and add to the work. But yeah, I think thesis is probably going to put a hold on that for a little while.
Yeah. Well, you don't have to be in any rush to do it, do you? You can do it when it suits. But I can think of lots of colleagues in various services who would love a resource like this. They just need to know where to find it.
That is something that's definitely on our radar, to put it all in one place that people can just have within their service. Yeah, and I think this whole process has been a huge learning curve as well, in just learning how to get things out there. And we definitely are drawing from other people a lot, such as yourselves and people at the university, on how do we present this as a website, how do we get this out to other people. And I think the same will definitely happen if there's any chance of a book. We will definitely be in touch with you again, so please help us, Heather.
I will help you, definitely. Because it's I think the thing is, it's very useful So, you know, as people use it and find it useful, they'll tell their colleagues, and then people need a very quick way. You know, I think the combination of a book and a website is ideal. You know, even if the book is only available on your website, but people like something to carry easily in their bag, don't they? You know, that does help. Yeah,
and it may well be, even if the images and things are contained in the book, it means that people would be able to photocopy them rather than getting them from online. I think the way that we sort of set it up was very much suited to online working. And now that we're going back to more in-person working, there will need to be some adaptations to facilitate that a bit more as well.
Yeah, I think.
Although, I mean, I think on the website you can use the image gallery and you can download individual images for a particular purpose. But if the technique appeals to you and you think it might be something you would like to carry around with you, you can download the guidance document, which is a PDF, and then you can download. We've got the complete set of images also as a PDF file, and so you could download both of those, print them out, staple them together.
Okay,
it's not quite a book, but yeah, absolutely, slightly more lo-fi.
Really there.
But that's great. So what have you both learned from this process? You know, how has it changed you and your expectations of yourself or your work or your work community? You know, how has it affected you going through this process of developing a new technique?
I think we've probably learned an awful lot in the last sort of year and a bit. I think one of the things that really stands out for both of us is the support we've received from the EP community in particular, and the wider community of psychologists. People are so enthusiastic, so willing to help, and supportive of new ideas, and it's been a pleasure as trainees in particular to receive that support, so that's been really lovely.
And what about the impact on you as a person?
I think I've particularly learned a lot about PCP. I think it's been nice to have achieved something outside of the course, and sort of this is something that we took on when we had a bit more time, but this last year we definitely haven't had that time. So it has been a bit of a juggle, but when you sort of look back on it and look at, you know, the website and the things that we have out there now, it is really lovely to have something sort of concrete that we've done together. And personally, it's been a real pleasure to be able to spend time with Cleo, because we're not placed together anymore. So we get to regularly check in. We organised earlier in the year a walk to arrange CEDS things, and we didn't do anything to do with CEDS, and we just chatted for a few hours, and then we had to organise another meeting to actually do our work. But that's been really lovely as well, to be able to stay a bit more connected, even though everything's virtual and we're all sat in our homes.
Yeah. What about you, Cleo?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I absolutely wholeheartedly agree with Abby. Not to imply that the project has been an elaborate way of still hanging out with my pal, but yeah, no, that's certainly been a pleasure. And just to be able to kind of, I think, in terms of as an individual, I feel like it's completely shifted my concept of my how to express it. I think probably ultimately it's kind of to do with confidence. Like, I think there was throughout the year on placement, there were a few times when we said, wouldn't it be awesome if we could do this, or wouldn't it be awesome if we had that? And then there came a point when lockdown happened, and we just had, you know, as Abby said, you know, we found ourselves in a bit of a limbo, and we were like, do you know what? Why don't we just do this thing that we've been talking about? And I think it's, you know, as Abby said, through the encouragement and kind of the culture of the course and the team who kind of deliver the course, just giving us that self-belief. And yeah, so just seeing something through to fruition has been like incredibly confidence boosting. And I yeah, it's been amazing.
If somebody else was in a similar situation where they've got an idea, what are the pitfalls to watch out for?
Yeah, I think doing it together has definitely been useful. And getting early support from people at the university, just to get us off the ground and to be able to check in regularly. I think if I was doing it on my own, I would have lost motivation or sort of ended up in a bit of a hole. So if you can, work collaboratively. I think
reach out and use the community.
Yeah, definitely. And it's been so useful having that feedback loop built in. So doing those trainings and getting the feedback, having that feedback survey has been really, really useful. I don't know. I guess just time management is always a thing, especially when you're training. I think that's how it is anyway.
Yeah.
But I think partly not to set yourself too many expectations. Cleo and I have definitely had to take our foot off the pedal a little bit this year, and that's fine. It's sort of taking its own path, and we are following it.
Yeah. Would you say the same, Cleo? Is there any particular pitfall you would warn people about?
I think time management is a good one. I mean, I think we've been, because the reception was so immediate and so enthusiastic, I think we felt like we had to jump on every opportunity as it arose. And actually there is time, as you said, the book might be something that we come to at some point in the future. It doesn't need to be now, and this is an ongoing project, and this will be something that Abby and I probably will continue to work on for a number of years, and so just taking things slowly and not feeling the need to kind of rush into everything.
I mean, when did it not exist? How long ago?
It probably started existing just over a year ago.
Wow.
In terms of the drawings, that was we probably had the first drawings last July time.
Yeah.
And then we used the summer last year to sort of write guidance and get a bit of a plan together.
Okay. And I guess you'd been discussing the idea of doing something before that.
Yeah, I think it was a bit of a sort of playful, wouldn't this be good? And then, as Cleo said, when we had more time, it was sort of like, we don't have an excuse now, let's do something about it.
And it can be, I think, quite nerve-wracking when you've had an idea and you made it into something, and then for the first time you show people it officially somehow, you do a talk or something. And I can remember doing that with Drawing the Ideal Self, and I was thinking, oh my God, I don't know what why are these people listening? And what if they asked me a really difficult question? But people were very nice.
I remember when we first emailed it to Tim Cook at Southampton, because he was our first year tutor, and a bit of a hero in our eyes. And so we emailed it to him, and because it was a summer break, he took a little while to get back to us. He was obviously busy, and we were quite nervous waiting for that response. At that time, thinking this might be a mad idea. This might not be a goer. But no, he was fully enthusiastic. Yeah.
Oh, good. And it shows the importance of having that sort of mentorship, doesn't it? That somebody who hears what you're saying and encourages you along the way. Because he's come up a few times as someone who's been very helpful to this process. And I think it's good that we know his name now, because then he's credited. But that's so important, and it can lead to great things, which is what it's done with this. This technique didn't exist, and now it does, and that's fantastic. Amazing over a relatively short period of time. In your lifetimes, an extremely short period of time.
And I think an important other when we're thinking of people who've kind of helped influence the process, Brittany Hartwell at Southampton as well. She did an input on PCP for us, and her inputs always kind of blow our minds, because I think she's a sort of a very lateral thinker in that way. And so when she did the input on PCP, she really showed us that PCP is so flexible and open, and actually you could use lots of different things to kind of and kind of combine them with PCP to kind of create an activity. And so she was talking about talking stones, and then using go-go's or other sort of resources to kind of combine that with a PCP kind of style and kind of elicit information and constructs that way. And so I think it just kind of blew our minds, and we were like, do you know what, we could do it. We could just go for it.
Yeah, good. So you've had good support along the way by the sounds of it.
Yeah, I think we could shout out lots of people. We've the university staff in particular, Sarah, who runs the course, has helped us with getting on the blog, which was the first place that we posted it, the Southampton University blog. And Colin helped us out with sort of making sure we had some copyright on the bottom of there, and all those sort of little things that we needed to help us along the way. There have been people there with us the whole time, which has been really nice.
That's great. Fantastic.
Yeah.
Okay, so people really need to go to the website, have a look. They can download what they need to download or what they choose to download, and get on with trying it out. Yeah,
I think so. Try it out, see where it takes you, and get back in touch if you can. Let us know how you got on, if you have any ideas, anything that did or didn't work well. We are very open to hearing any sort of praise or criticism or anything in between.
Yeah, good. And any ideas for research?
Yeah, definitely. If you would like to do some research, we are keen.
Well, I'm thinking that actually some of these pictures would be quite good on a teacher training course research project, wouldn't they? You know, which are the situations which you as an NQT would find particularly daunting, for instance, and then that leads to an exploration of what it is about that. So lots of different ways they could be used. Brilliant. It's going to be very exciting, and to see how it develops over time will be really, really exciting for me and for lots of other people.
And for us, I hope.
Yeah, brilliant. Okay, thank you. Thanks so much for explaining clearly what it is, and I will make sure people have all the information that means they can go and have a look. I hope you found that useful. I think it's fantastic that we've got some new techniques appearing, and also that this resource has been made to be freely available to people. One of the things that bugs me is the cost of resources and the way that limits who can use them. So you can download all of their resources on their website, and in the show notes you'll find the link to the website and also their email address. And really, if you've got ideas about things that could be included, please do contact them. Don't forget, you can also come and take part in the workshop at the Coventry Constructivist Centre's next CPD Day. That's in September. You can find information about it in the show notes. You can also email Sally Robbins for a place. And Sally, you may remember from a previous episode of the podcast. Okay. Thanks very much indeed, and I'll see you again in September.